it's time to heal and feel, be real. You just gotta take your time, unwind and chill. Cause now it's time to love yourself. Build emotional and mental health. Cause Black woman, it's time to heal and feel, be real. Hey y'all, we are back with another episode of Black Woman Healing Podcast. Thank y'all for tuning in. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And we are back with another special guest. Today's guest is Sarah. Sarah is a Christian woman who empowers others to embrace hope in a world that says otherwise. Born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, she is a recent grad of Liberty University with a Master's of Science. My bad. I'm so used to saying social work, y'all. A Master's of Science in Criminal Justice, Forensic Psychology. She is also an alumna of the King's College with a BA in Politics, Philosophy, and Economics with a pre-law minor. Sarah currently works as a case manager for justice-involved individuals. With this profession, Sarah spends most of her time providing resources and support to individuals who are participating in the supervised release program. She is also the host of the top 10% globally ranked podcast called Rough Edges Podcast with Sarah Fox, where she shares educational tools about mental health, anecdotes from her healing journey, and the intersections between faith and mental illness. As y'all can hear, we have a lot that we could talk about today, but before we even jump in, let's break the ice with Miss Donika. What you got, Donika?
Okay, so if you all listened to the episode before this, we're doing this new format where for now, and I'm going on Reddit, but I'm hoping that folks actually reach out to us to ask questions, comments, so that we can actually have our icebreaker from our listeners. But in going on Reddit, this is what I found, and we'll discuss this. So one of the users says, "When I drink, I feel better, and I'm scared. Any advice?" What would you all say to this user?
Well, first off, I would try to get into the basis of why you continually drink, because I feel like if we know the why, we can know the how as to help you to get better.
Mm.
Okay. I think we got the answer there.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking too just about yeah, like what does feel better really mean? I would want more context. Like you feel better because you're not thinking about it anymore. You feel better because you fixed the problem while you was drinking. Like I would want to know more of that cuz what really is feeling better? And then is that better sustainable? And it could become a dependency or an addiction if that's the only time you ever feel better. So yeah, I would want to dig a little deeper there.
Yeah. But I think for me, if I'm going based off of just what they shared and they're not going to reveal themselves, I'm not going to be able to dig deeper. I think my first response would be call one of those crisis helplines and talk to somebody.
Hey.
And maybe they can be supportive of you. If you're a teenager, call Teen Line. There are other peers that can help you out to talk you through those things. I know in our previous episodes we were talking about how the person has said like they felt alone. I think in these instances, this person sounds like they want to connect with someone and they want some support here. So use supports like that where you can call and they'll answer.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. How are y'all feeling about jumping into today's episode? Y'all ready?
Let's do it.
Okay, so for today, we're going to talk about phenomenal healing, what it's like to be Black, Christian, and bipolar. So before we jump in, we have to define what bipolar is because it is a word that is so freely and loosely used. And I know that oftentimes people don't even know what they're talking about. So, Sarah, can you define what bipolar even means?
Yes, and I'm glad that you mentioned that, Myra, in terms of how flippant the word could be used. People use it to describe, like, if you change your mind about something, you must be bipolar, or they say
Mm-hmm.
the weather change is bipolar. So I'm glad that you guys are getting into the root of what it actually means. And so before I give you my answer, I must preface it by saying I'm not a mental health professional by any means, and I'm a mental health advocate who is giving experience based on everything that I personally went through.
Yeah.
And so, with that, bipolar disorder is a mental health condition in which you could experience extreme changes in mood. So it's kind of like you have two poles, two opposite ends. One is mania and the other is depression. And so with bipolar disorder, you're kind of moving between those two poles. So with me, I got diagnosed with bipolar 1 disorder. And so that means I'm able to experience mania, which is a euphoric state of mind. Like you feel like you're on top of the world, nothing can touch you, and you have a severe like lack of sleep because you don't believe that you need it. Like when you're euphoric, you don't think you need sleep, you barely get to eat even. And so you would rapidly talk as well. Like all your thoughts are just going at max speed. So that's mania. And with the depression, I can say that I've experienced some severe lows, especially around the times of grief. I mean, there have been times where I've just hit such lows in my life. And the depressive mode is really kind of just like depression, but it's a little bit more severe in the fact that your thoughts could actually turn into psychosis. And with psychosis, that usually also happens on the mania end, but you are hearing things, you're seeing things, and you're hallucinating. And that's when it really gets to the point where you need to start asking for help, especially with like the manic episodes. So that's really the crux of what bipolar disorder is.
Well,
Thank
thank
you
you.
so much for breaking that down. That was so needed. I feel like people get so confused with BPD and bipolar specifically. So thank you for that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, in thinking of that though, we're going to be discussing a few different pillars of your life. One of them being Rough Edges podcast with Sarah I. Fox. So why did you start your podcast?
Yeah, so that's a great question, Donica. I love that because it wasn't even meant to be a podcast at first. It was really just supposed to be me having like a blog or a website, and I post my little musings about, oh, here's how I feel today, and this is what it's like to have bipolar disorder. And I was telling this idea to one of my friends, and she was like, girl, no. Like, you could do a blog, but wouldn't it be more impactful if you did a podcast? Like, there's lots of people doing it, and it would be beneficial for people to hear your voice and experience what you experience by you telling them rather than them reading it on a website. And I was like, no, I can't do that because I hate my voice on recordings. I don't like how I sound. I was just making up all these excuses until that same friend, she was having a podcast with her other friend where they did relationships. And I was one of the first guests on the podcast talking about my relationship with God and how that connects to the church. And when I was done, I was like, oh, this is what a podcast is? I think I could be able to handle it. Until I wanted to start it on my own. And then I recorded the first episode like 50 times over, trying to
Mm.
make it, actually good. But the main driving force behind why I created Rough Edges is because I wanted people, especially in my community, my Black community, my church community, to really understand what it feels like and what steps you can take to help somebody who you know is going through a mental health condition. Like that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to spread awareness about it. And I also wanted to show that faith and mental health could go hand in hand, especially when you talk about the hope that faith can give. And I'm speaking from my personal experience of faith because my faith in Jesus has been the anchor to my life and it has given me the hope that I needed. And that didn't mean that I only went to church, I only read the Bible. That meant I was reading the Bible and taking my medicine. I was going to church and going to therapy. And the two have definitely helped me towards my healing journey and even towards stability. So that's the main reason why I created Rough Edges.
Wow, what a story. We're so glad that that person had you on their stuff and like made you realize like, yeah, you can do this. You have a lot to speak about and you're helping the community and also helping yourself at the same time, which is super beautiful. So yeah, and we're obviously on our podcast, so you got to it's work. We know it's work, but you're reaching the people. And then thinking of like continuing to reach the people and talking about some of these things. Uh, After you first got diagnosed with bipolar disorder, if you could speak to yourself when you first got diagnosed, what would you tell her?
Well, Donica, I love that question because I almost wish I could go back in time and tell my younger self, especially who first got diagnosed. Let me tell you the way that they gave me this diagnosis first off, so you can have some context. I was in the hospital because I had a manic episode in 2021, and that was the first time I had ever experienced that, and I was waiting on a diagnosis. One of the nurses came back with a packet in her hand, and she gave me the packet, and she said, "We've spoken with the doctors on this, and we've come to the conclusion that, you have bipolar disorder, and here's a packet that you can read about it." And I was just like, wait, hold on. Bipolar disorder? I'm like, of all the things, like, why that one? And so it still like gets to me to this day. Like, they handed me a packet, and on the packet, on top of it, across in big bold letters, said bipolar disorder. And I'm just like,
Mm.
first off, it was just kind of callous the way it was handed to me. And then at the same time, I had to go through, even internally, understanding, like, okay, where am I going to go next? Like, what am I supposed to do? This seems like a life changing condition, and I don't know what to do. So I would tell my younger self, I would say, Sarah, first of all, it's a diagnosis and it's information about your condition. It's not a life sentence. It's not a label. It's not a personality trait. This is information about what you experienced in your manic episode and how you could get better in treating it going forward. So I would tell my younger self that first. Second of all, I would say do your research on this because you need to know what your symptoms are and you need to be able to figure out, okay, if I'm stepping into a hypomanic state, which is almost mania. If I'm hypomanic right now, I need to know what I need to do to keep me from getting into mania because that is not where you want to go. So learn the symptoms. Your diagnosis is not a label. And the last thing I would say to myself is your diagnosis doesn't have to define who you are. It's something that you have, but it's not something that has you. And so you need to be able to know that so that way you could say, I have bipolar versus I am bipolar.
Yes. Can you like loop in how religion like plays a role in this? Like how do you I guess discuss this diagnosis while also considering like the religion part of you or the religious part of you?
Yeah, most definitely. So for me, I don't even really call it religion. I call it like my faith in God because religion has that stigma also attached to it where it's like, oh, she's talking about Christianity, the church, and there's a lot of church hurt that goes with it. And keeping that in mind, I wanted to be able to say my faith in God made the difference because there were a lot of times where, even in my own church community, where I felt kind of ostracized because people thought it was a demon I had to pray away, or they thought that this was something as a result of lack of faith. And so when I say faith, I really mean like my personal relationship with God, which is cultivated by me praying to Him. Because to be honest, when I was in the hospital, I had a lot of questions, especially for God. Like, hey, why did you let this happen to me? What is going on? And, like I had all of those going through my mind, but I also prayed and asked, I'm like, God, if you're going to have me in this hospital, can you at least be with me? Like, don't leave. I'm mad at you, but don't leave. And so I had that honest conversation with God about the fact that I have this disorder and you might have allowed it to happen and gave it to me. And I was honest about my feelings. And that's the one thing I can say that brought me hope is because I was able to be honest with God about what I was going through instead of it being something that I had to bring to my church and that I had to say, hey guys, I'm dealing with this thing. And then here it's a demon possession. And I think there has to be some type of balance. It's not just all faith because I know a lot of the times, especially with me growing up in a Black Christian household, it was either faith or herbs. Like it was one or the other. Either we're going to boil a herb and help you, or we're going to go to the church and pray about it. And so that is something that I wanted to, in building Rough Edges, is to really peel back the layers of that and say, okay, you want to pray about it? How come when you have a physical illness or a headache, for example, when we have a headache, the first thing we want is our Tylenol, our ibuprofen. You know what I mean? But when it comes to a mental illness, we want to stay away from the medicine. We want to say that, oh, this is not something that you have, it's a spiritual thing. Like, why do we over spiritualize mental health? And so I wanted to like pull back the curtain, if you will, to really understand, okay, what role does faith play? And what role does mental health treatment play? And really go into those spheres.
Wow, thank you for breaking that down. We're curious, like, what practical tools do you use in your daily journey as a podcast host, doing the work that you do, just all of the things that encompass who you are? Like, what are some tools that you found to be helpful in your journey?
Yes, so the main tool that I use, which has been the most helpful, I love to write. So journaling has been like my bread and butter for like everything because I love the idea of just like not only writing it down, but you could actually see your thoughts. And instead of it becoming so overwhelming in our heads, like once it's on the page, you could get to say, oh, okay, this is not something I really align with. That's just something I was feeling in the moment. That's not true about myself. So journaling is definitely something that I do. I also make sure that I get my sleep because for bipolar disorder, sleep is essential. Like it is the thing that will make or break your experience with having the mood swings. So you really need to be careful about your sleep. And another thing I love to do is listen to music. I love listening to music because it helps me to just calm my brain down. And especially if you got the lo-fi, I love lo-fi, like like that type of calming music. So I'm able to just calm my brain down and then have a little music sesh or just sing to myself and stuff. So yeah, those are the main things that I use.
Oh, yeah, no, it's so important to have those things. Like, we need that, whether you're a mental health professional or you're doing this community building type of work, like, you have to have those things. So, we talked about today a few different things. Do you have any takeaways for our listeners? This could be anything that you want to leave the audience with.
Yes, absolutely. So I would first want to leave the audience with the fact that your diagnosis is not who you are. And I think a lot of the times we get confused as to like personality traits and mental health conditions. And so you're not your diagnosis. Like you're not a bad person because you have your diagnosis, especially if you were just diagnosed. That's not something that is going to define you for the rest of your life. So I want to first say that. Second of all, I want to say that you matter. I know a lot of the times we feel like we're scared to take up space or we're scared to lift our voices and, really bring our story to the forefront. If you want to be able to share your story with someone or you feel like you can't, I also felt that I couldn't. And now I'm here with these two amazing ladies talking about my story. And so it is possible. So just know that you matter. And lastly, your voice makes a difference. You can advocate for yourself, especially with mental health. You can definitely do your research. You could definitely advocate when you're speaking with the psychiatrist. You can tell them how the meds are affecting you, or even with your therapist. Like, there's a myth that people say that you got to stick with one therapist. Like, no, you don't. You are benefiting just as much from the service as your therapist is. So if you're not feeling like you're jiving or making a connection with your therapist, you could definitely change that. But you can be a self advocate for your mental health condition.
Yes, absolutely. You can, you can, you can. And we encourage you all to do, to do, to do. So thank you so much, Sarah, for joining us today on Black Women Healing Podcast. We encourage you all to go listen to Rough Edges podcast. And this has been another episode of Black Women Healing Podcast.